has the United States and France in shambles after kicking out both countries over the span of the last few months. After ousting the previous puppet of the West, we now have an anti-colonial government in Niger that has no tolerance for United States and French influence. This is a huge blow to the United States and the West because Niger has been a strategic military location used by France and the United States during their counterterrorism operation. In fact, the United States is now forced to close a $100 million drone facility that they just made in Niger last year. Just fantastic use of our taxpayer dollars, by the way. The West has been so concerned with Niger's new anti-colonial mindset that they sent Victoria Nuland there as an obvious threat. Victoria Nuland in the West, in their very smug and condescending way, wagged her finger at Nigerians and warned them about Russian and Iranian influence in their country. Nigerians were so offended by this statement by the Biden administration that they responded by kicking the United States military out. The ridiculous belief of the West that Africans have to be told by Russia, Iran, or China that United States influence in their country is bad is absurd. As if Niger needs a reason to dislike France and the United States. The fact that the United States and France have to blame Russia and Iran for Niger kicking them out of their country shows that the United States is facing a giant problem of legitimacy and declining influence on the global stage. Niger and many states in Africa is embracing China and Russia because while the United States bombs, Russia and China build. What's poppin'? My friends and family, we are back at Thursday night with another banger. Big shout out to my friends at Hotspot, producing top-notch content, great editing work as always. Tuesday, I have my boy Q Anthony Ali with us, and we did a dive into Haiti. We did a dive into African history and why the West is interested in the resources in Africa, the ways in which the West tries to control Africa. Q Anthony Ali is an amazing historian. So Tuesday, we talked a ton about Haiti, a ton about Africa. We'll cover Africa some more. You guys already know we got to keep you guys well fed here at RBN. We just had Q on Tuesday. How do you guys like the return of Post-Duopoly show? Post-Duopoly show returned yesterday. Man, long ass show, but it's always fun to have conversations with my boy Kit, do Dissonance. CJ did a great job hosting as always. And then earlier today, we had the organizer panel with that was hosted on the JB and Savvy show. Amazing show done by Savvy and JB. We are keeping you guys well fed here at RBN. Well fed. Make sure you guys share this stream because as you guys see in the hotspot video, I want you guys to understand I wasn't even scratching the surface. The hotspot videos, they asked me to keep it around 2 minutes or so, which makes sense because they're shorter videos. I love those shorter videos. I feel like it helped me become much sharper as a commentator. First, we do a lot of research, and I was reading a ton about what the hell is going on in Niger, and it's fascinating what's going on. The West is in complete shambles because Niger has kicked out France and the United States, which symbolizes a long time failing policy in Africa. Now, this is the first thing I will pose to neocons because they obviously believe the United States presence in Niger is good, just like they assume United States presence in Haiti is good. I have a question for you guys. What good has United States military intervention, United States military presence has done for Niger? You have the United States, which is the most powerful military force, the wealthiest nation in the world. But Niger is more unstable than ever after decades of U.S. military occupation in Niger, military coordination in Niger, U.S. bases in Niger. The United States is the biggest military in the world, leading AFRICOM, coordinates with ECOWAS, who's in shambles. Their goal, their stated goal on why they is in Niger, is for counterterrorism operations. That's one of those buzzwords, my friends. If you ever hear the words counterterrorism, you know you're dealing with bullshit. How can anyone justify the United States mission of quote unquote counterterrorism in Niger when terrorism is higher than ever in Niger? And this is even by the United States. And how long have you guys been there? But terrorism is still a big problem. Niger is still unstable. So what the hell are they doing? We need to start asking these questions. They've been on a counterterrorism mission for decades. Terrorism at an all-time high. Niger is as unstable than ever. What is the United States military doing there? Going to tell you guys. Because as I covered in the video, you had a $100 million drone facility that is being forced to close because of this new base Niger government. You guys see they use these scary words, Niger junta. The junta. You mean the legitimate government of Niger? Niger has been a Western puppet. They always been friendly of the West, just like many colonized Africans have been. African countries have been. Now they have an anti-colonial leader, anti-colonial ruling party that even declined bribes from Emmanuel Macron. We're gonna cover this here soon. But how can anyone justify United States military presence there? They was there to have a strategic military location so they can control West Africa, get intel, and control the flow of uranium. So if you guys don't know, Niger is one of the most uranium-rich countries in the world. Around 15 to 30% of the EU's uranium, the uranium that comes from France, that comes from Germany, that comes from Niger. So Niger, a country that's relatively poor, you got to ask yourself this question: why is the United States and why is France so invested in Niger? The answer is obvious: uranium. And also, see, this is also a good comment. Thank you, Janice. Always leave great super chats. They also funding terrorists, sowing discord. They claim that they are there to fight terrorism. Do you guys know junta? Yeah, military junta. Do you guys know that if the Nigerian government requests help from the United States and they file a request for backup, for assistance on a counterterrorism mission, do you guys know the United States reserve the right to decline them, and they often do? In this military arrangement, the United States, in fact, there's no evidence of the United States engaging on the ground in Niger against terrorists. And it represents how much the Nigerian government was in bed with the West. The fact that Niger accepted these horrible deals that made no sense because African leaders had a long history of taking bribes. They take bribes from the West and they sell their people out. It's a tale as old as time. It's been one of the greatest tragedies of Africa. These African leaders that take bribes from countries like France, United States, and they take pressure from the West because they just want to maintain their power, and they can enrich them and their family and their cronies in the process. They like, sign me up. Countless interventions supported by the CIA, who the TYT supports, that installed vicious, violent leaders in Niger. So the United States have no interest in actually engaging in counterterrorism. They are there to subjugate Niger. So when this new government took hold in 2013 after their coup, you had France and Emmanuel Macron that offered bribes to the new ruling government. They even were trying to pressure, and this goes to this story right here, and it shows how they miscalculated. And it will just insult after insult, because everyone talking about the United States leaving Niger, but we need to talk about why. Insult after insult. The Nigerian government declined the bribe from France. The second that Niger declined the bribe, that is when France supported the ECOWAS intervention into Niger. You guys understand? That is the timeline. They also, the United States, the number one concern that they have right now is controlling the uranium deposits in Niger. And now, ongoing theme of something that we've been covering on RBN, because I've been explaining to you guys how absolutely important the story of increased Russian and Chinese influence in Africa. Because, as I mentioned my hotspot, Russia and China builds while the United States bombs, and they subjugate and turn these governments to essentially proxy states of the United States. They emasculate their leaders. So you had Victoria Nuland, and I covered this at the time. I guess I'll put this receipt up before I get to that one. I'm trying to decide what order I'm going to go to. You have Victoria Nuland that visited Niger out of nowhere without scheduling any meeting. And guys, I need you guys to understand, this is a common power move that the West would do to African leaders. They will expect African leaders to make time for them. They will be extremely inconvenient to African leaders. So they have an African summit that the Biden administration held, an African summit that was set in America. Someone explain to me how that makes sense. You guys have an Africa summit, but you guys don't hold it in Africa. You guys hold it in America. Why? That's a power move. You guys bring your ass over here. The new Nigerian government requested audience with the United States and France. No response. They demanded that they return the government to the Western control puppet. Then after they get no response, Victoria Nuland and the Biden administration rose up out of nowhere with no scheduled meeting. And guys, this is a power move. And this is something that African leaders talk about all the time. It's a lack of respect. Now we are diving into why Niger kicked out the United States. So this new government come in, the United States stroll in, then they can, hey guys, let's make a meeting. They're like, fuck you. Who the fuck do you think you are? Just strolling in here and just demanding that you can have a meeting with us. And now, if you guys think I'm being nitpicky, can you imagine if Victoria Nuland just show up to the UK, France, or any country that is deemed equal standing, any Western country, and they just have a spontaneous meeting, and then they start barking demands at their government, demanding that the Tories give power to labor, making demands. That was essentially what Victoria Nuland did. Look, I'll just read this passage here. On Monday, acting U.S. Deputy Secretary, and now she retired now, Victoria Nuland met with coup leaders, the legitimate government, and said they refused to allow her to meet with Bazoum. I'll now say the former president leader's name, who she described under a virtual house arrest. She described the mutinous officers as unreceptive. They were the mutinous officers. You guys see the language they're using? They was unreceptive to her repeals and start negotiations to restore constitutional rule. So essentially, the arrogance of Victoria Nuland to come here, to go to Niger and like, hey guys, I know you guys think you're a legitimate government, but get the fuck out and reinstall our Western puppet, please. They're like, get the fuck out of here. Who are you? And now this is the second part of this. Probably one of the most important parts. So you have the general disrespect. You have the Biden administration that is outwardly delegitimizing the new government in Niger. You have France that is making demands on the government in Niger. And then once that Niger didn't buy into the demands, all of a sudden France is teaming up with ECOWAS to support an intervention. So remember all this. And now you have this part here. the United States that was essentially warning Niger and telling them to stop furthering their partnership with Russia and Iran. You even had the Biden administration that accused Niger of selling uranium to Iran, which the Nigerian government denies that they did that. But it was another accusation that was offensive that was thrown at Niger. You had Blinken, you had Biden. They're like, oh, look, see, this is why Niger government is so evil, because they're sending uranium to Iran and Russia. We demand you end your partnership with Iran and Russia. So once again, you had the Nigerian government. They're like, who the fuck do you guys think you are to tell us who we can have relationships with? And to be clear, guys, the new Nigerian government wasn't even that unreasonable. They was willing to work with the West. They was telling the West that you guys better respect our sovereignty. We're going to make our decisions, and we're going to work with you guys at our own pace. But we also going to work with Iran and Russia. So this is what caused it. U.S. warned Niger about ties to Russia, Iran, before the junta revoked the accord. And now this is the narrative that coming out from the West because they're in shambles, because Niger called their bluff and told them to shut the fuck up, and they just booed them, the military, from their country. So now Western media, corporate media, and Western officials, they're now blaming Russia and Iran for starting propaganda campaigns in Niger. So obviously, the quote unquote dumb black Africans, they can't think for themselves. This is the deeply ingrained racism that comes from the West. They assume that China is colonizing Africa, even though they're coming up with mutually agreed terms. Africans, they know what is best for them. But you want to know what's even more absurd with this accusation? It is very public and very well known that Niger has always had a relationship with Russia and Iran. For decades, my friends. Decades. So why now? Why now? Why is the United States and West putting so much pressure right now? Even though Niger always had friendly relationships with Russia and Iran, even when Niger was strongly a Western puppet. Because back then, Russia and China influence in Africa is not what it is today, my friends. You have China and Russia that is rapidly expanding their influence in Africa. You even have Emmanuel Macron that accused Russia for stepping on his tail in Africa. Emmanuel Macron blames Russia for their failure to handle their colonies. So guys, this is a straight up political move by the United States because they have now chosen to escalate tensions with Russia, China, and Iran. So they are going to African countries and giving them an ultimatum. You either choose us or you choose them. And Niger told them to fuck off. We choose Russia and Iran. Fam, I can't even begin to stress how big of a deal this is. It shows how much of a fake wet tiger that the West is. They have no real international influence anymore. Russia and China completely won the propaganda war for good reason. Because Africa, as Q. Anthony Ali explained, is going through an industrial boom. And this is because of China and Russia, who's, unlike the IMF, forgives debt in Africa, providing, I'll put this one up. I was trying to find another story, but I think this works. Especially from unhinged maniacs like Tucker Carlson, Tim Pool, all these anti-China derangement syndrome people. China cancels loans in Africa all the time. Let me see if I can find this other story. I didn't have this prepared, but yeah, Russia that was canceling loans. Cancel African loans. Cancel African debt. Let me see if I can find this receipt. Oh, Jesus Christ. I didn't even see this one. Putin promises grains debt write-offs as Russia seek African allies. So, I can't stress enough. Africans know what's best for them. The West can't accept that, though. And now, another very interesting thing, because we're going to have Asar Rod join us very soon. I wanted to cover this because, as you guys see, this is a big thing that I'm focused on Nick and Night Season 2. Is covering these stories from Africa that I don't think being covered enough. The failure of Emmanuel Macron's administration in Niger cannot be overstated. Because after Emmanuel Macron tried to bribe Niger, tried to put pressure on them, threaten military intervention, they tried to whip ECOWAS up. And like, all right, let's have this ECOWAS, this Western controlled military bloc in West Africa. Now they're a military bloc in West Africa, but they largely take the direction of the United States. It's essentially an extension of AFRICOM in a lot of ways, where they engage in a lot of quote unquote counterterrorism with the United States. And then when Emmanuel Macron said, "Hey man, we might have this military intervention. We might have this military intervention in Niger." And then ECOWAS was like, "What? Huh? The fuck you talking about? we don't got no problem with no Niger." Trying to see if look at this one. Look at this. West African bloc lift coup sanctions on Niger in a new push for dialogue to resolve tensions. This goes directly against the wishes of France and the United States. Once again, another middle finger. I just found out looking for something else, trying to look for something else. But I'll read just a little bit of this. ECOWAS West African trade bloc shaken as 3 member states withdraw and form their own alliance. I'll just read just a little bit of it. The withdrawals come as no surprise. Throughout West Africa, there is a growing frustration with ECOWAS over its struggle to ensure security in the region. Coups has become commonplace, and West Africa has seen a dramatic increase in terrorist activities over recent years. So what exactly is the point of ECOWAS? What exactly is the purpose of United States military presence in Africa if you guys can't even accomplish your stated objective of counterterrorism? Which they absolutely do not do. What have we told you on RBN? That not many other channels are telling you guys. They want to just assume the United States is going to win every war. The United States haven't won any wars in the modern human history. No one else is willing to talk about this other than RBN. They have never accomplished their stated objective. Their stated objective during the war on terror was to eradicate terror. Terror is at an all-time high. Okay, once again, going by State Department lingo, just to make my point simple, right? Their goal is to eradicate terrorism in Africa. That's why they need never-ending occupation. And that's why countries and people in Africa lost faith in ECOWAS in the West, because despite their intervention, despite them controlling their resources, despite the political pressure, despite the fact that they turned their leaders corrupt because of bribes, they can't even do the one thing that will be a positive from all this negative bullshit is at least security. If you're going to have the West dominate you politically, at least give us fucking security. They're not even doing that. There's not enough time, because this segment only going to be like 30 minutes. Not enough time to explain to you guys how much the West has fucked Africa, completely destroyed Africa. And now you have this new Pan-African movement, Hands Off Africa movement, that's spreading like wildfire. I mean, you can credit Gaddafi a lot for lighting the spark when he wanted to create African currency to decrease reliance from the West, which is why they got him killed. Now, this guy has been phenomenal. He's been just very principled anti-colonial leader. While you have African leaders taking bribes left and right, you have the I don't even like his name is very hard for me to pronounce. Actually, let's see if I can get AI to pronounce it. It'd be good to learn something new. Let's see.
Pronouncenames.com.
Let's see how you pronounce it.
Abdurrahman.
Oh, come on. There's no way. Let me hear that again.
Abdurrahman.
Okay. Abdurrahman? Fuck.
Man. Abdurrahman.
Well, I'm trying, guys. But the reason why I want to get this guy's name right is because I'm putting respect on this motherfucker's name, because African leaders have sold out their people for so long. This guy declined a bribe for Emmanuel Macron. He would have got extra aid. While African leaders are taking bribes left and right, he declined the bribe for Emmanuel Macron. And then that is when France decided to do this ECOWAS intervention that is crumbling before our own eyes. So, as I explained, the international community in Africa lost faith in ECOWAS and United States intervention because they are not even able to decrease the amount of terrorism in the region. In fact, terrorism and instability got worse. So accurately, the new Niger leader accused the French forces of trying to destabilize the country. Because what would this intervention, what would the ECOWAS intervention into Niger actually accomplish? Nothing but instability, nothing but chaos, which is the goal of the West. We have our guest Asal here. How you doing, Asal? I'm gonna introduce you here very soon. Let me see why I'm missing this. I just scratched, but bro, 30 minutes in, we just scratching the surface on this. Oh yeah, let me find the drone base. I didn't show you guys that receipt. I gotta speed this up just a little bit. Drone base in Niger was shut down. And it was a $100 million drone base that they just built last year. It just finished last year, I should say. 100 million. I want to get a headline that shows how much it costs. Here it is. This is the drone base. This story was written in 2016. This drone base was just finished in 2013. $100 million drone base that they now no longer can use. Fuck, I'm gonna see if I can find the other one. But this is the drone base that they can't use. Pretty much, this is a big loss for the United States. I think that's about it. But one thing I want to remind you guys, have you guys guessing, because I'm gonna continue to update you guys on this. I'm gonna get us all in here. This is mostly about the rise of influence of Russia and China and Iran and Niger, a relationship that they have for a very long time. And now the Biden administration accused Niger of providing uranium to Iran, which the Nigerian government, they reject. They say it didn't happen. But that relationship has been a thing for a very long time. They're using that as a way to spark conflict, which is why the Nigerian government is accurately accusing France and the United States of destabilizing their government. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that 30-minute lecture over Niger. I told you guys that hotspot video was just scratching the surface. Now I have my great friend here because we still got a lot to cover on Israel. A lot of breaking stories as well. You have this. I saw this right before we went live today, and this is one of the main stories I put in the headline. Look at this. Look at this. As I was releasing my hotspot, it took me a while to make the hotspot. So I was doing a lot of research on Niger today. Then I looked, and apparently you have Mike Johnson that is open to invite Netanyahu to get to Congress. And of course, Chuck Schumer is 100% okay with this. Can you guys imagine this? What happened during the Obama administration, where you had this hostile war criminal that is giving address to Congress? Who really runs this country? I don't know if you saw this headline. I saw. Welcome to RBN once again. Saw is amazing analyst, amazing researcher, amazing writer. You have great. I saw your last article on sanctions. Fantastic work. You got a book on Iran, I believe, as well. You very accomplished writer, also a good friend of RBN. So thank you for joining us. I want to toss this up to you, and we're gonna talk a lot about Gaza. I don't know if you saw this story. What's your thoughts on Chuck Schumer, Mike Johnson inviting this war criminal scum Netanyahu to give this address at Congress right after the United States said that attacking Rafah is like a red line, and Netanyahu was like, "I don't give a fuck about your red line." So I want to pass you. What's your general thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of sort of interesting things in what's happening because, first of all, it's not the first time, and you mentioned 2015 during the Obama administration, Netanyahu had a controversial address to Congress and it was controversial at the time because essentially he was there to undermine the Obama administration when it was entering into the deal with the nuclear deal with Iran, right? So you have Israeli officials interfering in U.S. politics. And there's a lot of examples, obviously, of Israel and Israeli officials interfering in American politics. But what's interesting about it is that Schumer, just a few days ago, said, essentially, made a statement that was supposed to be this very critical statement of Netanyahu, not Israel, but Netanyahu, because obviously he reiterated the U.S. staunch support for Israel, but criticized Netanyahu and called for elections in Israel. And there was a lot of backlash to that comment to Schumer from the Israeli side, essentially saying like, we don't. This is on the Israeli side. We don't interfere in American politics, so this is outlandish that a U.S. official would say that. Now, what's interesting about that is, number one, that's not true. Israeli officials do interfere in American politics. We see, again, Israeli Prime Minister, the same one, Netanyahu, coming to speak in Congress. But what's funny about Schumer saying that and then approving of this, it shows you a couple of things. On one hand, it shows that Israel has typically been a bipartisan issue in the U.S., right? The Democrat or Republican, staunch support for Israel is something that is like one of the only things actually that these parties outwardly agree on. And I say outwardly because there's a lot of rhetoric sometimes that makes it seem like they disagree, but internally they actually agree. But on Israel, they outwardly and very realistically are pretty allied in this. So it shows that the issue of Israel is becoming more of a partisan issue because on the Democratic side, at least, some support is being lost. But at the same time, you see, it's all lip service. So you have Schumer trying to be critical with Netanyahu, and then a few days later, it's like, well, no, well, I mean, of course, we always welcome a leader of Israel coming to speak. Except that this isn't just an average leader of Israel. This is someone who is not only, he's already been a war criminal. This is not the current war on Gaza is not the first war in which Israel has committed war crimes under the leadership of Netanyahu, but this is the first time that Israel is on trial for genocide. And so you have the leader of a country on trial for genocide coming to address the US Congress. And then the other part I thought that was interesting about the backlash on the Israeli side towards Schumer's original comments, which were critical of Netanyahu, was, if you don't want the US to have an opinion about Israeli politics, then stop taking US money, then stop asking for US weapons. Exactly. So it's this just incredible amounts of hypocrisy where Israeli officials feel like they can tell the US what we should be doing with our tax dollars, who we should be giving weapons to, what deals we should be entering into, what countries we should be going to war with. But the US has no right to respond, not even in kind, but to respond in any way, shape, or form. So Israel is a sovereign country. What is the US? It's a huge mess, really,
Yeah.
when you look at how entrenched that the issue of Israel is within our political system, and it's not shared in the public as much anymore. I mean, the U.S., given the amount of propaganda that Americans get vis-a-vis Israel, it's actually incredible that you see this shift happening, especially now with the events happening in Gaza, that a bipartisan majority have for months now supported a ceasefire, and yet our politicians won't do it. And this is yet another example of when, the government that is theoretically supposed to carry out the will of its people just won't do it, even when there is bipartisan support. This is a Democratic administration. There's overwhelming support amongst Biden voters, and they still won't do it. They come up with their own versions of ceasefire that are really just temporary pauses on genocide.
People need to understand that you have literally people within the Biden administration begging him to stop being a criminal. Because what Biden is doing, I need more people to keep repeating this for all the rule of law people. What Biden is doing is illegal. Biden said that Israel is bombing indiscriminately. Israel has blatantly crossed a red line. So it is a violation of Leahy's law in Section 6201 of Foreign Assistance Act to provide arms and ammunition to a country that you are acknowledging you are and that is credibly committing war crimes, especially a country that was found plausibly committing genocide by the ICJ.
Well,
Now,
that's why they won't admit it, though, right? Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but that's why they won't actually publicly admit that Israel is committing war crimes. I mean, I've seen press briefings with journalists taking pictures on their phones, right? Just showing whoever is the state spokesman at the time, like, this is a picture of a war crime, something you cannot, even if you have detained someone, that you, and in a lot of cases they're journalists or they're civilians, but even if you took the line that you've detained someone who is accused of a crime, you still cannot strip them naked and torture them. That these are still war crimes. So there's this constant denying of any criminal activity as far as Israel is concerned. And I point this out because it took the US all of, I want to say, 10 days to say that Russia had committed war crimes in Ukraine.
Yes.
About 10 days. It's now been over 5 months, and we have, I mean, you don't have to be a legal expert. You do not have to have, insider information. I mean, just looking online, you can see a stream of war crimes. Again, today, we saw footage of Israeli drones taking out 4 men just walking in open space, trying to get to their homes. So this is something that's repeatedly happened. But the reason I bring this up, why it's important of what you were saying, the reason they will not say it is because it implicates the US legally for those crimes. Absolutely. So there's constant denying of them.
And that's why those fucking weasels, Bernie and AOC, won't call it a genocide. Because that means the people who arm me, meaning Biden, which is their best friend, they love Biden. That means Biden would be complicit with violating Leahy's law. So while AOC and Bernie pretend that, oh, well, I don't want to be defamatory, no, they are being political. They know exactly what they're doing, and I need people to understand. And Schumer, Bernie Sanders, and AOC, who keep talking about Netanyahu, they know what they're doing too. I peeped their goddamn game. Do you guys know only 2% of Israelis believe that Israel is bombing too much? So what the hell will these elections even do? You would just elect an even more violent government. Netanyahu is barely sovereign, barely making his own decisions. Because the same thing they do with Putin. They want to pay anything on the leader to, in this case, ignore how systemically awful Israel is, a terrorist state that doesn't deserve the right to exist. So they just paint everything on this leader, Netanyahu. Do you guys realize if Netanyahu took the advice of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, Israel would have this motherfucker hung by a tree? I apologize, I forget the name of the leader, but there was a leader in Israel that accepted the peace deal in the 90s that was assassinated shortly after. Someone in the chat, please fact check me. I'm blanking on the name of a leader. So there's precedent of Israeli leaders accepting peace deals and being assassinated. And I promise you, if Netanyahu would have done what progressive would have done, imagine if he accepted a ceasefire within the first 2 weeks of this war, Saul. Can you imagine what the fascist Israeli settlers would do to him? You know, the Israeli settlers that is blocking aid trucks to go into Gaza, that purposely using starvation as a tool of war, those settlers, that government, they probably have a military coup if he tried to have a ceasefire. So you gotta understand, what Netanyahu is doing is the will of the Israeli people, the will of the government. You had the opposition party in response to Schumer and Joe Biden's criticism that said we are all on board with Netanyahu.
You're referring to the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, right? In the 90s, in the 1990s.
Yeah.
So you know he was actually assassinated by an Israeli radical who was opposed to peace.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that will happen to Netanyahu if he would have did what the West wanted to. What's your thoughts on that, Saul?
So the thing about focusing on Netanyahu, and the reason why this is a sort of political tactic of officials in the U.S. is because by focusing on Netanyahu, Israel is not the problem, right? We don't have to address things like why do we keep vetoing UN resolutions? Why are we giving arms to Israel? Why are we giving billions of dollars of military aid to Israel? Why are we doing these things for Israel? Well, they justify that by saying, well, the problem isn't Israel, the problem is Netanyahu, and they try to separate these two things. Of course, that's not the case. And the funny thing is domestically we do the same thing, right? The problem isn't American politics. The problem is Donald Trump, this individual human being that's not representative of anything, just this sort of anomaly within a system. And the reality of it is, whether you're talking about Donald Trump in the United States or whether you're talking about Netanyahu in Israel, they are not anomalies. They are very much part of the fabric of those systems. And the Netanyahu's predecessor before becoming prime minister this time around, I think it was Naftali Bennett. Bennett has talked about, like, with pride, about killing Arabs. Early in this particular war on Gaza, you had an interview with Naftali Bennett where he's asked about hospitals being attacked, children being left, children in incubators being left, and he got angry with the journalist who asked him this question and flat out said something to the effect of, how can you ask me about Palestinian civilians as if they're not human beings, right? So this is the person who was prime minister before Netanyahu. There are people to the right of Netanyahu, but there's this attempt to constantly take out individuals, right? When cabinet members and Knesset members, people like Smotrich and Ben Gvir make inflammatory comments, what the Biden administration tries to do again is take those individuals out and admonish them as if, again, they're not representative of what's actually happening in the state. Ben Gvir was an extremist Israeli settler who's now has a position within the Israeli government. So how does that happen? It happens because it is state policy to expand settlements. It is state policy to protect settlers, and it is state policy to allow settler violence against Palestinians. So when that is the state policy, this attempt to disentangle them is ridiculous. Removing Netanyahu does not remove the problem. The occupation is decades longer than Netanyahu. And by the way, the same thing happens on the flip side, right? They center Hamas rather than understanding that Hamas came into existence decades after the occupation. So it's this attempt to compartmentalize these issues to not understand the broader issue. The same thing happens when we talk about Gaza, as if Gaza is separate from Palestine, from Palestinians, from the West Bank. None of these issues are separate, but it is political rhetoric to try and separate them, to basically make people not understand the reality on the ground, that it does not matter if you remove Netanyahu from office. Somebody else will replace him. Potentially someone even worse may replace him. So it's it's the policy of the nation state of Israel, and it's the policy of the US government to support that state no matter what it does. That is at issue.
I'm not going to play this video because it might fuck our YouTube channel up. But this is another example of just war crimes that are being normalized. This is what you mentioned earlier, correct?
Yeah.
I'm not going to show it because I think it may get our channel fucked up because violence, because you see people fucking dying.
It's a
I can't show you. Yeah, so I'll just read the description here. Al Jazeera has acquired leaked IDF drone footage showing the IDF killing 4 unarmed Palestinians in Khan Yunis using drone strikes. The footage clearly shows to terrorize and instill fear in Palestinians as a means to coerce them into leaving Gaza permanently. And you want to know who the Biden administration and the MAGA-owned Israel party has lost the essentially, you want to know who the liberals lost the moral high ground to? My friend sent me this right before the stream. Blows my mind. You had Alex Jones that seen this, and Alex Jones used to do critical coverage of Israel. He condemned Palestinian resistance as to me, but a lot of people do. Look at this. My friend sent me this like 5 minutes before the stream on that footage that you was talking about. And now, when I read this to you, I want people to acknowledge that Biden on this issue is now officially to the right of Alex Jones. Israel has lost the high ground. This is not war. It is a robotic mass genocide. The Democratic Party and Chuck Schumer is being outflanked by Alex fucking Jones. Section 1091 of Title 18 United States Code prohibits genocide, whether committed in a time of peace or a time of war. Genocide, blah, blah, blah. He does a good job quoting the genocide. And I was literally reading it shortly beforehand. And you guys know Alex Jones has a massively right-wing audience. And look at this mini ratio here. 1,000 comments, 9,000 likes. That's kind of a ratio. And I was looking at this earlier. And you see a lot of right-wingers going after Alex Jones on this. And Alex Jones is like doubling down, saying I straight up don't agree with the mass slaughter of civilians. And I don't bring this up to praise Alex Jones. I bring this up to show you guys how Alex Jones and very few people like Candace Owens and Alex Jones, even they are outflanking these psychopaths in the Biden administration. Now I'll play this clip and I want you to respond. We probably got another 7 to 10 minutes here. Here's Karine Jean-Pierre, who's probably not even going to get an MSNBC contract after this. She knows that she's selling now. She doesn't do a good job of being optimistic, like all these white press secretaries do. Like the last person, Jen Psaki, they'd be optimistically sold out. She knows she's saying some bullshit, and she has such low energy, and she's such full of shit that I think her career is over after this. Like, this is horrible. I'm gonna play the video. I don't even need to hype it up. Listen to this, because they was asked about how all these Muslim Americans that are furious with the Biden administration. I think Biden is going to lose next election because of it. So they asked about how Biden not even meeting with these people. And so I want you to respond to her answer, because this answer is insane. Like, she's significantly to the right of Alex Jones on this issue now.
Majority of Palestinian American, Arab American, and Muslim organizations that the White House reached out to for a meeting this week rejected the invitation. So what is the White House strategy on this? And are there plans for the president to directly engage with these communities?
So look, the president, as you know, has had an opportunity to meet with members of that community not too long ago. Leaders of that community, the Arab American community, the Muslim American community, not too long ago. And so, look, what I will say is we understand that this is a difficult time, that this is a painful time. We understand that the events of October 7th,
Well, October 7th, Asal, when asked about Arab Americans and their frustrations, hey guys, October 7th. And she obviously looked like she couldn't give less of a fuck. I'm going to let it continue and I'll pass it to you, Saul.
You know, that killed more than 1,200 souls.
No idea what happened to my light.
In Israel,
All good.
and also took Hamas, the terrorist organization, also, as we know, took hostage more than 200 people. And what that led to that war that led to is incredibly painful. We understand that. And so, look, we're going to continue to, as you know, the president, senior officials from the White House met with members of those communities in Illinois just yesterday, and we're going to continue to have those regular meetings to hear directly from them. And the president believes that's important to do, to hear it from those voices.
What's your reaction to that, Saul?
So first, I'm very sorry. My light literally burned out. So, I'm having a technical issue, but I mean, what matters is you can hear me. I remember when I saw this video, because I've already seen this, I was sort of floored by her response. Not just the words, right? Not just the message, which was not even addressing the question, right? The question was about Arab and Muslim Americans. And obviously the concern of Arab and Muslim Americans is the crimes being committed against Arab and Muslim Palestinians, also Christian Palestinians, because they are also Arab Palestinians, and she doesn't address that at all. But what really struck me, beyond, like I said, beyond the words, was the body language. It was like she was annoyed to have to answer this question, right? As soon as the reporter says Palestinian, you see this sort of like sigh, as if she is tired of having to field questions about the government she is representing being complicit in genocide. How you can be annoyed that people are going to keep asking you this question, I don't understand. But on top of that, you're also annoyed that your constituents, right? I'm sorry that they're Arabs and they're Muslims, but they're still your constituents. They're still Americans. So rather than being annoyed that they actually have concerns, this is how she handles the question. I mean, it was an awful, awful response from beginning to end, just everything she said and the way she acted, almost like flippant, right? She's just flipping through these pages like, this is kind of annoying that I have to answer this question, but let me just say something.
I covered this in the hotspot video a few weeks ago. This is why her ass got demoted. Have you ever seen a press secretary that talks so little? What the fuck are you doing, John Kirby? You guys see all these other people, John Sullivan, all these people that give all these addresses? That's not by accident. And I covered this a long time ago, and I could get into much detail for the sake of time. But Karine Jean-Pierre was demoted. It just wasn't made official. They gave John Kirby more power, and that's why they start holding these joint conferences, because the Biden administration was reported, and Biden directly said that they don't have faith in her covering foreign affairs. In fact, they lost all faith in her in general. So they don't want to completely ruin her career by just publicly demoting her, but they essentially demoted her. And she became a sidekick to John Kirby. And remember, John Kirby is ranked below Karine Jean-Pierre. So why the fuck is Karine Jean-Pierre subservient to him? Because she got demoted in real time because of the answer like that. And to me, like, and you was talking, I'm glad you see that before, and that's the same reaction I had because she was asked about Arab Americans. And she's like, oh, what about October 7th? You guys did it to yourself. And I want to get your reaction to this, and we can get in there wrapping up after this. There's so much to discuss. But I saw this headline, and this is a coordinated effort to smear pro-Palestinian protesters. And I found this funny. I just want to get your thoughts on this and the general media angle on Palestinian protesters as a whole. Look at this headline. Who's behind the pro-Palestinian protest that are disrupting Biden campaign events in blocky city streets? Look, they have a spooky headline. A spooky headline that is designed to plant the idea that there's some sort of nefarious foreign adversary that's funding the pro-Palestinian events. So they then do an investigation into who is financing pro-Palestinian protesters. They didn't find anything, but then they proceeded to write the scary headline anyway. So very broadly, you can respond to this, but very broadly, like you hear the response for Karine on Arab Americans, but very broadly, like the reaction you see for the corporate media smearing people who are anti-genocide.
Well, this has been the corporate media has picked up on this, but this has also been the same kind of language that we've seen from college campuses, especially, right? Like there's a lot of, every time you see students at a university engaging in protests against a genocide, protests against occupation. And this has been so even before this war on Gaza. Campuses have not been, I mean, I can tell you from my own experience, this is years ago when I was an undergrad, when like Israel student groups, pro-Israel student groups would have an event on campus. If there were protesters for that event, I remember having an Israeli official come to speak at the school, right? There was a police presence and protesters had a line that they couldn't cross, and it was to make sure that the event was not disrupted. The same did not happen in reverse. Events that were for Palestinian students, students who were protesting against Israel's actions, those events, there was no police protection. Anybody could go disrupt them. There were classrooms. You're sitting in a lecture hall and adult men would come to the class essentially just to intimidate and yell at students. And nothing was there to protect the actual students who were being intimidated by these people. And then so it's so funny now to see the framing of the way just any pro-Palestinian protest, and it's not just that it's pro-Palestinian protest, it's anti-genocide, it's anti-mass slaughter, it's pro-international law, it's pro-human rights, it's pro-peace. That is what these protests encompass, and they're framed in this way to make it seem like it's so nefarious. To me, it's a reflection of how deeply dehumanized Palestinians are, that the idea that people could naturally think that it's wrong for thousands upon thousands of children to be killed and to protest that is so far-fetched in the minds of the people who are saying that there's something behind it, right? Who's behind the protest? There's nothing behind the protest. There's nothing there. There's anger at TikTok. Why does TikTok's algorithm put pro-Palestinian messaging more than pro-Israeli messaging? That's the content that people are looking at. So it's all to say that there's this grand conspiracy, right? And if the UN is saying something about Israel's actions, they're with Hamas. If it's the World Food Program, they're with Hamas. If it's the World Health Organization, they're with Hamas. If it's Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, any international NGO, any international institution, none of them can criticize Israel. If you have college campuses where people are learning about this history, these are all, leftist, corrupted professors who are trying to brainwash students. If students sympathize with Palestinians, it's because they've been brainwashed. It's actually insane when you think about the depth to which that argument has to go to say anyone who is critical of Israel, anyone who thinks what is happening is wrong, has been somehow brainwashed or is pro-Hamas. And that's the only way that this issue can be framed. From the highest court in the world, right? From the International Court of Justice, down to the UN, down to every NGO, down to professors and their students. It's really insane to watch play out. But yeah, that's what that headline is. That headline is to say, there's no way that you could be pro-Palestinian because you actually think they're human beings too. It has to be something behind the scenes pulling the strings.
Yeah, and every time Biden is asked about this, he said, "Yeah, we understand that people are upset that their family members was killed in Gaza." I'm like, I don't got no family in Gaza, and they purposely erased the ton of Black and Latino people that are visibly upset about this too. They may seem like the only
Jewish people who are upset about this, right? And any criticism of Israel is called anti-Semitic, and yet you have Jewish Americans at the front lines saying, no, this is wrong, especially if it's in our name, right? You have that's what I mean when I say it's reached a level where no one can sympathize or empathize with Palestinians as human beings. If you recognize that they are human beings, that means that they should have the same equal rights as any other human being on this planet. That is part of a conspiracy.
The absolute last time I'm gonna share. It's always fun to do these little 1 hour foreign policy power hour streams. You know what I mean? Another banger for you guys. But now to the point you made earlier, I want to make sure I show you guys this because I meant to show it earlier. I forgot. So remember when you mentioned how Netanyahu and Israel said it was absurd that Israel meddles in American elections? You have AIPAC that is putting out record numbers. I want to show you this because this is another example. I made a hotspot video just like a week or two ago, showing you guys a tweet where they was bragging how they had a clean sweep on Super Tuesday. Now look at this, another tweet where AIPAC is just openly bragging about rigging the elections. Another great night for pro-Israel Democrats. All 8 AIPAC-endorsed Democrats won their primary election tonight. So far this cycle, they are 40-0. 40-0. All 40 AIPAC-endorsed candidates won their primary. This is what Zionist capitalist dictatorship looks like. So this is my last thing I want you to respond to, Asal. And this is obviously debunk the bullshit that come from Israel saying they don't meddle in United States politics. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I think, what I would say is just imagine a lobby, a pro-Russian lobby, right? That would try to sort of boast it about the same. First of all, we wouldn't be allowed, right? We differentiate who is what. If it's an adversarial state, you're not allowed to actually to lobby on their behalf. But the fact that money in politics is so it's so open, right? It's not a secret. It's not secret money anymore. I mean, we have the idea of like super PACs, and super PACs are a little bit more secretive. But essentially, how do you end up with people in power that do not represent what the actual masses of the population want? And this is just one example of how that happens, right? The power of the Israeli lobby in the US is one, but we have all sorts of other lobbies, whether it's about pharmaceutical drugs, whether it's healthcare, whether it's gun control, whether it's so many different issues that there's a large consensus in the country. And yet at the same time, our representatives do not do what people actually want them to do. It's because of the amount of money that is in politics. And I mean, that tells you something about the level of corruption that we actually live in.
Thank you for joining me as always. Thank you for $49, Martin. Thank you both for your presence and ideas. Absolutely. Always great to be in conversation with Asal. Thank you for joining us tonight. Any last thing you want to shout out? Anything you want to promote? This is I was trying to find a hardcover. This is one of the books. I was trying to find the one I just was reading. This is one of the books you wrote. Anything you want to promote? Any last thoughts you have for Asal before you wrap up?
I just want to encourage people to keep talking about Gaza. And the reason I say it is because I know it's been many months and people, there's so many issues, there's so many things going on in the world, and it's not to diminish any of those. But this is a rare situation where the president of the United States could stop what's happening right now. He could do it if he wanted to. And that's rarely the case. So keep talking about Gaza, keeping up the pressure. Because that's the only power that we have. It's the only tool that we have to hopefully bring this horror to an end.
Well said. Thank you for joining me, Asal. Make sure you guys check out the Sabi and JB show if you guys missed it earlier. I'll be back at Nick at noon on Saturday. We still got a lot to report on. I'll cover Haiti with Q Anthony Ali on Tuesday. There's a lot of Niger and obviously Israel. There's so much stuff to cover on that today. Still a lot of content. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good night. Take care, my friends.